Thank you. And on that note, we'll call the Government and Operations Committee meeting of June 28th to order. We have one delegation with us today, Dan Derby, Regional Fire Chief. Welcome, Dan. And Dan is here to provide us an overview of some of the activities, and I would assume answer any questions that members of council may have of you, Dan. So once again, I share the sentiment of Lisa Payson and the rest of council, and please extend our thanks to the fire department who fought that fire under some pretty extreme conditions. We very much appreciate what they do and the challenge that they were faced with that West Trail fire. So on that note, Dan, the floor is yours, and then council, you're more than free to ask any questions of Dan, and I'm sure he'll do the best he can to address whatever questions or concerns you may have. So on that, Dan, it's all yours.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. And just sorry, my radio's on in the background because there's another event going on, so I'm just listening in carefully. So I just at the request of Mayor Payson put some statistics together, and I'll share my screen if that's okay, and just go to this graph. And really, what we're trying to demonstrate here is the impact that the OD crisis has had on our call volumes, and both for the fire department and BCEHS. So you can see red is the fire department call response since 2016, and then blue is the BCEHS. And this, of course, is specific to the OD issue. And so when I put this together at the beginning of May, the busiest year we had for overdoses was a total of 48 overdoses back in 2018. Coincidentally, when we put this together, I think it was on May 7th, we had responded to 48 overdoses year to date for 2021. Since that time, we've actually now responded to 63 overdoses, all within the city of Trail. And so, you know, the crisis is being expedited. I mean, the feeling amongst myself and my peers is that the overdose crisis has been amplified, or you know, the crisis with the increase in funding that was provided to this group of the demographics, and they have a drug supply available to them that they couldn't afford before, but they have increased funding, and that's complicated the issue. The other things that this graph points out, just to cover it off quickly, is 2017 was our busiest year ever. We did, I'll go to another graph just to show you here, or another table, sorry, just to show you. In 2017, down the bottom here, you see we went to 1,864 calls. And then that dropped down over the following years, and then in 2020 to a low of 1,153 calls. That was a direct result of the impact of the pandemic and reduced activity. And it feels like, I tried to do an extrapolation a number of months ago, and it feels like our call volume is moving back towards probably a 1,500 calls for 2021. Associated with these OD and first responder calls is also burning complaints. We get a number of burning complaints that are tied to this issue as well. And you know, even as much as our fire on Sunday night, and I'm just looking for the message on my phone from BC Wildfire, they're saying that the fire is human-caused recreational fire. And so that's not for public release yet, you know, but just there's good indication of where the fire started, and there's people are telling us there was people in the area on Saturday night, and so it just shows you the risk of fire associated with this type of activity. So I think I'm going to stop sharing. Yep, go ahead, Sandy.
But Dan, I just want to caution you, if you have other stuff that you don't want to share with the public, we are in the public. So just in case
Yep.
you have other things that are public, they're are not for public consumption, then I just wanted to remind you of it. So,
Thank you for that. Yes.
okay.
Um, and I think that, really, those are like some of the stats that I shared with you there are, we had to do a manual pull of them because we didn't, in the past, we haven't identified the overdoses as we've gone. We've since implemented just in the last month where we're actually going to track this information live. So it'll be a more accurate subset of data. But I think what was interesting for me is both our stats matched the statistics that I got from BCEHS. So I felt comfortable that our manual review of that data was correct. I really think that, there has been changes in response protocols from BCEHS that have seen highs and lows in our calls. At the same time, this type of call generally hasn't been affected. We've as a fire service tried to make sure that we continue to respond to these overdose related type calls. It's easy for people to focus on overdose, the word overdose, but often it can be unconscious collapse, short of breath, those types of things that are either somebody who has OD'd or they haven't been identified as an overdose patient. The other thing that's happened to us is we've actually responded to calls where we've had multiple patients when we've arrived, where we've had 2, 3, and 4 patients that are either overdosing or have overdosed. So it's a significant issue. Unfortunately, it seems for our local area to be an issue in Trail. We don't seem to have the same issue in the surrounding communities. I'm just looking at my notes. Yeah, I think those were the key things that I wanted to cover off, and then I'm happy to answer any questions that any of you may have.
Thank you, Dan. Eleanor?
Dan, where does the homelessness affect some of these categories? Where do you put your calls or your issues with the homeless? Where does that come into the picture?
So they would generally lie in the burning complaint or overdose related, because
Okay.
and then some general first responder calls, but the majority of the calls associated to the homeless issue, I would say, would get grouped into burning complaints or overdose related.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions of Dan? Go ahead, Lisa.
Okay, thanks, Dan, for coming in and doing this. I know it was quite a bit after my request to get all the data together, and I'm glad that it's going to be tracked kind of live now, because it would be great to have quarterly updates and just see how we're trending. So I think I have 2 questions. So when there's a call for an overdose, can you confirm who's called to that? Like, who's activated? Is it BC Ambulance and yourselves and the police, or who are the personnel?
Yep. So for sure, it's BC Ambulance and police, or BC Ambulance and ourselves for an overdose related call. I want to be careful in saying that RCMP would be called, because I think there was some changes where they're not called to some of these calls due to sort of the reporting of illicit drugs, right? And so that was a change that came in a couple of years ago that we should look for clarity from Mike on.
Okay. And so when we're looking at the first graph that you showed, and I know this is just for overdose response calls, and we're kind of May, maybe June now, I'm assuming that we're probably going to be quite off the charts this year, our biggest year ever with this. And
yeah, I would suggest that, like, we're already, what was that number I said? 63. So we're already, 15 more than our busiest year prior to this.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, if we continue at the same trend, we're going to be at 120-ish overdose related incidents.
And if I could just have one more ask, what toll is this taking on your team? I mean, when we look at I think every organization through COVID has had a toll of having to operate differently and work in a different environment in a different way. And even with us, I mean, it takes a toll on everyone in your staff, because it's not kind of what, when you came into the year, what your plan was going to be, what that is. And so obviously the changing call volume and what they're having to deal with, which is probably not going into fire school and thinking that you're going to be dealing with a multitude of ODs on probably a daily basis or a regular basis. How is your team holding up with that? And do you have processes in place to help them with that?
Yes, and so mental health support is actually one of my key focuses this year, and we're bringing in a program in October. We booked it for October because of the pandemic, making sure we could deliver it in October. And so it's called Resilient Minds, and it's about building tools from a preparedness perspective to be able to actually do our job. So that's a key piece for us to help our members deal with the impacts of trauma related to responding to these types of events on a regular basis. I would say that the good part about a small community is we know a lot of these individuals and we get to know them. And the bad part of a small community is we know these individuals and we get to know them. But at the same time, I think the team here, I think I think it takes an impact on all of us, but I think we're bringing the right mindset to the response from the perspective of we're here we didn't create the situation, but we responded to the situation, and our goal is to start improving it from the minute we get there. And so whether that's a fire or an overdose related call, that's the mindset that we respond from. And then that's also the mindset that we talk and rebuild from as a team after the events. Yeah.
Any other questions of Dan?
No.
Go ahead, Colleen.
I just have a quick question, actually, Dan. You mentioned that Trail has the highest number of overdoses in this area. Is that what you were referring to, the overdoses?
Yes, I was.
Okay. So when you say this area, does that include Nelson and Castlegar, and what's the area that you're talking about?
So when I'm saying that, I'm saying specifically to the response area that I'm responsible for, so that Rossland through Fruitvale and out to Janelle. And I'm just looking on my sheet to see if it actually lists Nelson on here.
53, I believe, Dan, in 2020.
Yeah, so we're not a lot different than Nelson that way, but similar.
So just a second question. Why do you think that is? Why do you think our numbers are so high in this area? Is it because of the, traveling homelessness between the area, between the cities, or are they congregating at Trail, or what's the reason for it?
Yeah, and I'm going to answer your question, and I'll probably go off on a wander here for a minute. So over the last couple of months, Sergeant Wasinowicz and I have started doing a Wednesday foot patrol together. For me, I asked Mike if he wanted to start doing this because I felt I had a lot to learn from Mike in dealing with this population and this group specific to the homeless conversation part. And I think some of the takeaways for me from him are we don't have the same homeless population in our neighboring communities around, like out in Rossland and in Fruitvale and Montrose, that type of thing. And I don't know if that's a mix of the services that are available in Trail or the location that they've just migrated to. But what I have picked up from them is like what we're seeing right now is that it's normal. Like right now, there's nobody living under the bridge. And some of that is just normal because the group becomes fairly transient in the summer months. But in the winter months, we've probably got a little bit, probably one of the better climates, for being outdoors. So that contributes probably to them coming back into this area as well. That's not facts, that's Dan's thoughts, sort of to your question, right? But that was very clear for me from Mike is that I wanted to learn, because you hear things about people saying that people are dropped off here, that the hospital, it's related to the hospital and all those types of stories. And Mike's really helped me understand the perspective of, like, as policing, they're not doing that. Like, they're not contributing to dropping off individuals at each other's communities, that they're really finding their way on their own. And, I think last Wednesday when we were out, we met two individuals that I hadn't seen before. And Constable Karn was with us, and one of them she'd seen once before, and another one she hadn't seen herself, right? So it's really quite a transient group, but I think amongst themselves, they get to know what services are available to support them in communities like Nelson and Trail.
Sorry, so could I, just one more question, Sandy?
Go ahead.
Thank you. I'm just wondering about your feelings on a safe injection site.
Well, I think it's part of the solution. And the reason I say that is I've been querying friends and colleagues, right? And so I have a retired detective from Calgary Police that I was hiking with recently, and she dealt a lot with this demographic, if you will, when in her time in Calgary. And she laid it out for me from the perspective of all of these things are a piece, but not one of them are a solution. And so her thoughts, and I don't disagree, are that, legal drugs, safe injection sites, the methadone programs, all of these things are pieces that will help these people.
Thank you, Dan.
Any other questions? If not, Dan, if I could change the focus over to fire. Unless things changed on the weekend, there is no provincial fire ban in place currently for campgrounds, etc.
I'm happy to tell you that it will be coming in at noon on the 30th.
Oh, okay, that's good news, because I was just at Christina Lake, and it's amazing how many people are still lighting fires, and it was 38 degrees at 7 o'clock at night. But do you have any jurisdiction within your service area? For instance, do you have the authority to ban fires? And I'm glad to hear it's on the 30th, but just for future and for some knowledge, do you have the authority to put a fire ban, say, at Beaver Creek Provincial Park?
Not currently, but it's one of the ones that, so I'm working on a bylaw update for the Regional Fire Rescue. And one of the goals is our bylaw is quite old, Sandy. And so I need to update the bylaw first. One of the reasons we want to update the bylaw is we want to talk with the East End Services Committee about burning bylaws and how we can manage burning in the future. So it's a discussion that's live. I don't think it's going to come about this year, but it is something that is coming forward.
Okay, thanks very much, Dan, and good to hear that the fire ban is coming on the 30th. So if there are no questions, of any further questions of Dan, thank you for making yourself available, Dan. And once again, please extend our thanks. Oh, sorry, Lisa. Oh, you're waving goodbye to Dan. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dan. Bye-bye.
Anyways,
Thanks, Dan.
Appreciate the opportunity to present and happy to come back anytime. Thank you.
thanks,
Don't
Dan.
be a stranger.
Okay, moving on to operational reports. The first is a report submitted for the Trail Regional Airport. And the recommendation here is to receive the report for information as circulated. Rob Baker is with us. I don't know if Rob wants to go through the report, or would you rather just open the floor to questions? Council members have had an opportunity to read it, but I'll let you decide how you want to proceed, Robert.
I have no desire to read it, so let's open it up and see what's important.
Okay. So you've all received the report. Do you have any questions of Robert in terms of the operations itself? No. Wow.
I got a question, Dan, Sandy.
Go
to
right ahead.
Robert. Robert, in one of your highlights, what is airside maintenance equipment?
Oh, that's such a a fancy way of saying the snow plow that we have, the sweeper, and any of our trucks that will drive up and down the runway or around the perimeter fence. So basically,
Oh.
any vehicle that we operate airside,
Okay.
meaning the same side as the fence that planes would be.
Okay, thank you.
Robert?
Hi, Robert. So how is generally the traffic on the flights? What are we looking at?
So it depends. There's many flights that we see that are full, so 19 passengers. And then there's flights that have 10. When I chat with Pacific Coastal, they speak very positively of the trail route. So compared to their other hubs on Vancouver Island or coastal British Columbia, trail remains their best small hub compared to all their others. Obviously, Victoria, Vancouver, Prince George do great, but
Yeah.
I mean, trail is in such a strong position.
That's
So,
great.
yeah, usually we have 13 flights a week, but due to COVID, we're at 6, so around half. And our numbers the number of passengers we expect to see this year will be about 30%, 35% of what they usually are. So if we
Yeah.
usually have 20,000 passengers, we should settle in around 6,000 or 7,000 by the end of the year.
Oh, nice.
Thank you, though.
Good.
That's great to hear in
Go
many
ahead,
ways.
Carol. Carol?
Yes, thanks, Councillor Santori. Robert, I just have a question, and heaven forbid that this should happen, but if we get into a bad situation with forest fires in the area, we will be servicing these planes in terms of fuel? Is that correct?
Absolutely. Yep,
Okay.
absolutely. So
I
we
just wondered-
source our fuels strategically from a supplier based out of Castlegar, and they can get us fuel within a matter of probably 3 days.
Okay,
They could rush it sooner if we had to. We could borrow fuel from them if we had to. In the past, they've set up vehicles, fuel trucks on our airport lands to help service aircraft if we know that we simply can't
Keep
store
up.
enough fuel to take care of everyone. So
Okay.
right now, we have about 20,000 liters of fuel on site. And if we had a fire within the vicinity, I suspect that would last us about a week. So we constantly, daily, we're checking our fuel levels. We're listening to what's going on with fire season, and we pull the trigger on ordering fuel whenever we need to make sure we don't get behind.
okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Great.
Any other questions of Robert?
Sorry, I just had a quick question.
Go ahead, Colleen.
I just wondered, your third bullet there, you're finalizing the new declared distances. Is that for the landing stretch and the takeoff stretch?
That's right.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So it's been a convoluted process between Transport Canada, NAV Canada, and us trying to settle on what our takeoff distance and landing distances will be. So hopefully we get there soon.
Okay, so you have no idea how much further you're gonna have to go out, or?
What do you mean by that?
The distance, are you gonna have to expand the distance of the runway?
Oh, no,
No?
the pavement we have is the pavement we have. If
Oh, okay.
council wanted a longer runway, we could do that, or wider, longer, but for now, it gets into the weeds where you start looking at definitions of distances and how they're calculated. And
Hmm.
so I'm hoping that, before the summer's over, everyone agrees on what our actual distances are, even though it seems straightforward to you and I. Let's just measure the pavement. But once you get into the weeds, it starts to get a little more complicated.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Robert.
Maybe just to tie together a bit of, Dan Derby's comments as well as the questions we've had, I can talk about Medevac. We received a $180,000 grant earlier this year that I believe council would have been made aware of, and that's primarily due to the fact that we have medical evacuations operating out of our airport, and we've seen a bit of an increase through COVID, whereas normally we might have about 100 Medevac flights a year, so every 3.5 days. We've seen more like 2.5 to 3 throughout COVID. I don't know if they're related to the pandemic at all. It's just noticed an uptake. So we're at about 100, or we're expecting about 130 medevac flights for the year.
Thank you, Robert. So if there are no further questions, we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which Robert will probably stick around for in case there's any questions, and that's the rehab of pavement rehabilitation in the amount of $165,484, and that it be awarded to Selkirk Paving.
Counselor Santori,
Yes.
we move to receive Robert's report on the airport.
Sorry, thank you. That's an oversight on my part. So could we have a motion to receive the report as distributed?
I'll
So moved,
make that
Robert.
motion.
I'll second.
Moved and seconded by Lisa, moved by Lisa, seconded by Robert. All those in favor of the motion? Motion is carried. And next is the contract award for the airport paving. Any questions of Robert in terms of the project itself or the bidding process? If there was any bidding submitted?
Move approval.
Second.
Seconded by Eleanor. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion is carried. Thanks very much, Robert.
Thanks, Robert.
Bye,
Thank
Robert.
you. Take care, everyone.
Thanks, Robert.
Thank you.
Okay, next is the Regional Age-Friendly Coordinator Report, and the recommendation is that it be received as information as well. So did you want to speak to this at all, Michelle?
Just give a very high level summary for council's information. Our Parks and Rec Director, Tricia Davison, did put together a summary report to accompany the final report that was prepared with respect to the Regional Age Friendly Coordinator position that was funded through last year. Back in the summer of 2019, a joint application was put forward to the Columbia Basin Trust by the City of Trail, the City of Roslyn, and the Village of Warfield for funding to hire a shared seniors coordinator to serve the 3 communities. And that funding was approved, and a coordinator was hired in the late fall of 2019. And the role of the coordinator was primarily to act as a conduit for seniors to service providers in the various communities, to help identify the needs and interests of seniors, to offer social events, basic programming and social engagement opportunities, and to develop and coordinate communications for seniors on matters of interest. Of course, COVID put a bit of a wrench into those plans, and so the scope of the work of the coordinator was quite different in that the live events that had been hoped for did not take place, but they did have some success with the online program offerings once some awareness of those was garnered. So the purpose of the reporting is just to give council the final details of the funding and the programs that were put forward. And it is being recommended that council receive the report as prepared by Heather Anderson of the Regional Age Friendly Coordinator as information.
I'll move receipt.
Moved by Lisa. Do I have a seconder? Seconded by Carol. All those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye.
The motion is carried. We'll now move on to item 5 under Public Works and welcome Chris on the Cambridge Creek Violent Lake Decommissioning Project and the Heavy Duty Equipment Award. Any comments, Chris, or any information you want to provide to council that hasn't already here?
No, I'm just here to answer questions if there are any.
Okay. If there are no questions, the recommendation is that council direct staff to enter into an agreement with, who are we here? Sublatis Environmental for an estimated cost of $803,000, including GST. And that's contingent upon the city finalizing all funding agreements and permitting for the project with provincial and federal governments. So what are council's wishes?
Move approval.
Moved by Robert. Do we have a seconder?
I'll second.
Second by Lisa.
Just
ahead.
one quick question, Chris. We've got grants to cover the whole thing, right?
Those are pending, yes.
Yeah, but they're pending, right? Thank you.
All those in favor of the motion? Or did I do that?
No,
Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Thanks very much, Chris. But I think you have to stick around for Green Avenue rebuild. But first is the janitorial services contract award to Russell Patterson in the amount of 76,800 per year excluding tax. What are council's wishes on the janitorial services?
So move.
Moved by Eleanor Gattafoni Robinson, seconded by Lisa. Any questions?
Yeah.
Not hearing any. All those in favor? Oh, sorry, Carol, go ahead. Didn't see your hand. Go ahead.
thanks, Counselor Santori. I just have a question. Is this a new person? I don't remember his name being brought up in the last contract. Was he the one that had it before, Chris? Oh, Michelle, sorry.
No, Roger Mayo had the contract for the last number of years.
That's what I thought. So this is somebody new.
Yes, Roger didn't bid on this contract.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Next item on the agenda is the Green Avenue rebuild project, and that's awarding.
You didn't
the-
vote, Sandy.
We can vote.
Oh, my God. I'm getting early stages of, I don't know, but something. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion is carried. Moving on to the Green Avenue rebuild project in the amount of 611,697 exclusive of taxes, and that council approved the use of True Consulting to contract the administration and construction duties in the amount of $34,700, including taxes, excluding taxes. Any questions of Chris on the Green Avenue project? Robert?
Yes, there seems to be quite a wide disparity in the bids, eh? Is that something that's happening now quite often or no?
We've discussed it in the background. We suspect that the two firms that were high were bidding like that because they're extremely busy right now. And the low bidder was looking for work. So that's all we can suspect.
That's great. Thanks a lot.
You're welcome.
I was going to ask the same question as Robert, because that is a significant difference, but these guys are all required for performance bonds and work. The city is covered in terms of those requirements, Chris?
Yes, this will be an MMCD contract, so they'll be required to have bonding and insurances as per the standard.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Motions.
So move as recommended.
I think Colleen had it. Colleen,
sorry.
moved by Colleen, seconded by Eleanor. All those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion is carried. Next is the Charles Lake Drive Water Line Replacement Project in the amount of $75,000 to True Consulting. Chris, did you want to talk on that? Pretty straight.
Although True Consulting is not the low bidder in this instance, we as a team, panel, evaluated the proposals as per the criteria which was provided to the proponents in the RFP, and the aggregate scoring of the group indicated that True Consulting would be the best value for this particular job based on a number of items. First off, True has more experience with our local water system. So they have the water model in-house, so they manage the water model for us. So they're familiar. The lead engineer on the project for True has more experience with this type of, these types of projects. And that was about it. So we are suggesting that we award to True based on the city's needs for this project, and that the proposed amount by True fits within the established budget.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, moved by Lisa, Do we have a seconder? Carol? Any other questions? Not hearing any. All those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
And the motion is carried.
Thank you.
Councillor Santori, would I be
Yeah.
able to circle back to 5.3, the Green Avenue rebuild, and just
Yeah.
get some clarification from Mr. McIsaac? Chris, we've had quite a few comments come in from the public on this matter. Obviously, the traffic flow has significantly changed into West Trail with the Green Avenue failure that happened in the fall, winter, and the need to withhold kind of, I guess, the improvements until the ground was stabilized. So can you just talk a little bit, and this is mainly just for the public, to the complexity of the project, some of maybe the barriers that you've had to encounter with this, and just to provide a little bit of a scope of really that what the city's been under with respect to this project, what the plan is going forward, and an estimated end date.
Okay, well, initially we experienced some delays due to COVID, obviously. Everybody is in the same kind of boat when they're looking for short notice engineering. This is a project which popped up out of nowhere on us, as you know, because it was an emergency or a failure in the water system. It wasn't something that was planned. So we endeavored to involve an engineering firm as soon as we could. So we brought True on board, and in the evaluation of the water main that runs up Green Avenue, there was some speculation early on as to whether we could avoid Green Avenue and bring the water to that pressure zone from another route, avoiding Green Avenue so we wouldn't have a future failure. And so the water model was used to analyze the situation a number of times with a number of different configurations. And it was determined that we could bring water from a different direction. So we're going to come off of, I should know this off the top of my head, anywhere somewhere up near Nelson Avenue. So we're going to enhance a water main up there. So we're going to increase from currently it's a 2-inch water main, and we're going to increase that to a 6-inch water main. And we're going to, and that will alleviate the need to actually put a water main back under that section of Green Avenue. We're also going to, and that water main that we're going to enhance is in a road right-of-way that is undeveloped. So if there's a future failure there, there won't be an impact to traffic or hopefully too many other houses or areas in West Trail, because it'll be isolating through a new valving system as well, which we're going to put in the ground. So that was one of the delays. There was a lot of engineering that went into it, a lot of analysis, and that caused delays, of course, because the consulting, well, True Consulting, along with everybody else, was just backlogged due to the pandemic. Everybody is coming out of the pandemic or was coming out of the pandemic with all guns of firing and wanting to get all their projects done. So we were in the queue like a lot of other people. So there were delays there. And then, of course, there's delays getting it to tender, going through the tender process, doing the tender evaluation, and then making the award, and then having contractor availability to start as soon as possible. So we are awarding, well, we now have permission to award the contract. So we'll work with K's to initiate the project as soon as possible, with the intent to have the project completed by the end of September.
Great, thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Not hearing any then. That concludes all of the items on the GOC for today, and I'll call for adjournment at this time and reconvene with regular at 6 o'clock. Lisa?
I'll move for adjournment.
All right, we'll see you all again at 6 o'clock. Meeting is adjourned.